Hey, in this video, I want to show you an amazing TypeScript trick, which is so useful and simple to create. Let's take a look at an example. So here's the use case, right? We have a parent component, and the only thing we're doing is returning a child component from it. Inside the child component, we want to receive conditional TypeScript properties. We want to type props. This is going to be a really good example. In these props, we always want to receive the car brand of the car as well as the car type. Then we want the battery capacity, but only if the car type is EV, and we want the fuel tank size only if the car type is gasoline. Now, defining the TypeScript properties like this is a really good practice. However, it doesn't quite achieve what we want to do. Let us try destructuring those components in the child. For example, we can get the car brand and mark this as the properties we have just defined, so we will get type safety. Then we can also destructure the car type, the battery capacity right here, and the fuel tank size. And we can save that child component. Now what we can see in the parent is we're getting an error because we're not passing any of those properties we have just defined. For example, the car brand can be something like Honda. The car type can be EV or gasoline. Now we also want to pass the battery capacity because this car type is EV. However, nothing stops us from A, not passing it, or B, just passing the fuel tank size as something like 30, whatever. That is not what we want. When the car type is EV, we want to pass the battery capacity as a mandatory property, and the fuel tank size should not be able to be passed. How the hell do we do that conditionally in TypeScript? You see, here's the problem. The fuel tank size and the battery capacity are both optional properties right now. You can tell that by the question mark right here. So you don't have to pass them at all. And you could pass them if you wanted to, but they're not logically linked at all to the car type. How do we do that? Well, first off, let's remove them. And let's also remove the car type. Okay, so let's format this and start with the property always want to pass, and that is the car brand property. Whether it's EV or gasoline, we want the car brand property to always be present. Then, in TypeScript, to combine this object with another type, we use something called the AND operator, and we can just insert an empty object for now. Right now, that doesn't do anything. For example, if you tried destructuring anything, we would just get the car brand property. However, what this allows us to do, this AND operator, is wrap this in parentheses, and in here we can nest another TypeScript operator, which is the OR property. So for example, we could say, or another empty object. Again, right now this would not do anything because these are both empty objects. But what we are saying here is that the type is always the car brand, and it is an empty object or another empty object. In here, we can conditionally or logically define whatever we want. For example, we could say the car type in here is going to be EV, and when the car type is EV, this object right here will be passed. So for example, we expect the battery capacity as a number. Interesting. Then in the other case, we want the car type to be gasoline, and we also want the fuel tank size to be passed as a number in that case. So we have just conditionally defined the properties. We always have the car brand property, and one of these, either this or this object, as the properties. What this allows us to do now from the parent component where we render the child is pass the car brand. For example, let's say Honda is the car brand. Then we can pass the car type and we get beautiful type safety with IntelliSense. For example, let's pass this as gasoline and we will get an error. Property fuel tank size is missing in type car brand string, car type gasoline, but required in type car type gasoline, fuel tank size number. Awesome. So we can see just because we have passed the car type as gasoline, we only get access to the fuel tank size property that we need to pass. How awesome is that? And if we try to pass something like the battery capacity as we did at the beginning of the video with 30, we can't because that is not a valid type for this. However, if we change the car type to EV, it would be because that is in our conditional type for the EV car type in our child component right here. This is what we're expecting if the car type is EV. We are getting error inside parent component. Let's remove fuel tank size because we cannot pass it because car type is EV. Now, if you wanted to actually use this in production, I suggest you do it this way. I just did a small refactoring where we have the EV props defined separately right here with the car type and the battery capacity, and also the gasoline props defined right here. It's nothing different from the inline definition we had earlier, but it just looks a bit or a lot cleaner wherever you define the actual properties because you have fewer inline typings. And then, really important, the question of how do we get access to these values right here? Because we cannot destructure them. We can destructure the car type, but how do we get access to the battery capacity or the fuel tank size? Can we just type them in? No, because they are conditional. That won't work. Typescript might think, oh, these don't exist. What the hell do we do? The answer is we do something called type guards. Instead of destructuring, let's get the props as is and do a type guard. That is, we have an if statement, and if the props.carType, now we get beautiful IntelliSense on that, is either EV or gasoline. Well, if the props.carType is EV, then TypeScript will automatically infer which properties we have access to. For example, we could console log the props size, and now we have a battery capacity. Awesome. And else, if the props.carType is triple equal to gasoline, since we already have the EV case, only this one is left, in that case, we could console log the props.fuel tank size. Beautiful. Hey, thanks for watching. I'm going to see you in the next one. Have a good one, and bye-bye.